Ms. Lawson, you may make opening statement on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Your Honor. Death. The most certain thing about our lives is death. It came all too soon for Javion Davis. He was just 36 days old. What happened on January 15th of 2013?
Excuse me, let me take a break here for a minute. I thought we had another juror coming in. Go ahead. Ms. Lawson.
Let me start over first. Death. The most certain part of our lives is death. It comes to all of us. It came all too soon for Javion Davis. He was just 36 days old. What happened on January 15th of 2013? Gerard Davis got up with his infant son that night, as he always did. His girlfriend, Charla, had resumed her daily activities after the birth of her son, and Gerard cared for the child each night. He first told the police it was a normal night, nothing out of the ordinary. His baby woke up crying around 1 or 1:30. He got up, he fed the baby, and he put the baby back to sleep. Nothing out of the ordinary until the next morning when his girlfriend said, "There's something wrong with the baby." He also told the police, when further questioned, the same interview, moments later, that he was getting the bottles ready to feed him, and he dropped him. He didn't think nothing of it, he said. He just dropped him. Then, he further explained, moments later, that he got the bottles, he changed Javion, and he was burping the baby while he was standing up. He leaned over to get a remote, and the baby jumped. And when the baby jumped, because according to Gerard, he always do a little jump, the baby fell and hit his head on the crib. He admits to being the last person to see his son alive. No one else was up that night. The autopsy results state that this was a death due to multiple injuries sustained in an assault, including a closed head injury with skull fractures. Not one, but two distinct skull fractures. One at a right angle on this side of his head, and one in the shape of a Y on the other side of his head. He had intracranial hemorrhaging, and he also had rib fractures. Healing rib fractures and new rib fractures. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, what's known is that we had a little baby boy, just 5 weeks old, with major fractures to his skull, broken ribs, both old and new, some contusions and bruises on his back. And those autopsy photos speak far more words than I can speak here to you today. You're going to hear from other family members that were in the house that night. The mother was in the house, the grandmother was in the house, and an uncle in the house. You're going to hear from police officers that arrived the next morning, and the medical examiner who did the autopsy a day after the death. end of this trial, 3 things will be abundantly clear to you. A 5-week-old baby died. That 5-week-old baby died as a result of an injury caused blunt force trauma to the skull. And that the last person to see that baby alive, by his own admission, was his father. Ladies and gentlemen, don't check your common sense at that back door when you walk in here. Keep your eye on the ball. And don't go swinging at everything you pitched.
Defense, do you want to make an opening statement at this time of reserve?
With your honor.
You may proceed.
(2013) at 8:08 on channel 2.
Hello?
Where's your emergency?
Yes, my baby, he's not moving, he's not breathing, he has no color, told me he's stiff. Please get here to hurry.
What's the address?
284 University Drive.
284 University
Yeah,
Drive?
284 University Drive, man.
Is it a baby?
Apartment number 9, apartment number 9.
Screaming.
This is
I
my
can't
baby.
understand you if you're screaming. You said it's a baby?
Yes, he's not even a good month yet.
Okay, and he's not breathing? And he's not breathing?
He's not moving, he has no color, he's stiff. He's not breathing.
Okay, we'll get everybody on the way.
Hello? I'm here.
We'll get everybody on the way, ma'am. 284 University Drive.
Apartment 9.
Apartment 9.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll get everybody going.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
There were 4 adults in the residence at 284 University Drive on the night of January 14th going into the morning of January 15th. One of those was Gerard Davis. Here's what the other 3 have to say about Gerard. His girlfriend Charlotte, the mother of the child, says Gerard probably had an even stronger bond with Javion than she did because she went back to school so fast. She says he did not do it on purpose, and I know he never would. Her mother, Melissa Hill, another adult in the house, says he didn't do it on purpose. Charlotte's brother, Matthew, says he ain't got it in him, man. He's too soft. I don't know the Gerard Davis that they're talking about. And neither do any of the adults in the home that you're going to hear from. I don't know who they're talking about, but it's not Gerard. You're going to hear that Gerard and Javion had a very close bond. Javion looked exactly like Gerard. Everybody called him his twin, including Gerard. And Javion was not their only child. Gerard and Charla had 3 children in the home. 2 of them were Gerard's. The oldest child was Charlotte's with another man, but since Gerard had met Charla when the oldest, they call him Xavion, was only 9 months old, Gerard called him one of his boys. And Charla will tell you that. Gerard treated them all the same. And I want to make sure no one mistakes this. The child who died is Javion, the youngest of the 3. Gerard's baby boy. But Gerard called them all 3 his boys. And he helped take care of all 3 of them. It always me back when I hear that Gerard admits being the last one to see the baby alive. Gerard was honest with the police. On the morning of January 15th, Charla sees that Javion has lost his color. She yells for Gerard. Gerard runs upstairs. He sees the baby. He calls 911, as you just heard. And medical personnel arrive. All indications are that this was not a purposeful act. The next day, Detective Slag finds out from the medical examiner that they believe that this was not an accident. The morning that he finds that out, he calls Charla and says, "Hey, I need you and Gerard to come down to the police department. I need to talk to you guys." He talks to Charla for a grand total of 18 minutes, wherein he calls her sweetie, tells her how sorry he is, and then says, "I'm going to need to bring Gerard in here now, and I'm going to have a very different conversation with him." There was never any investigation into the possibility that someone besides Gerard could have done this. After he says, "I'm going to bring Gerard in here and we're going to have a different conversation than the one I'm having with you, Charla, sweetie," he brings Gerard in, asks him to retell him what happened that night. Gerard tells him, and he says, "Gerard, from what I'm seeing, this has to have been anger or an accident." Gerard breaks down and says, "Oh my God, I dropped the baby last night. I was burping him. He was fussing. I thought maybe the TV was too loud. I reached over to turn down the TV. And he did a little kick when he burped, fell out of my arms. He fell and hit the crib. He cried. I picked him up, took him into the light. He looked fine. He seemed fine. He stopped crying. He cried like he normally would. He seemed okay. I put him back in bed. Oh my God, could I have done this? Oh my God." And that was it. Never mind the fact that Charla says she hears Javion wake up like he normally does around 1:30. Gerard gets up with Javion like he normally does, and he usually does, and he'll just stay up because he knows Javion's going to wake up and want to be fed. He had done this with their older child. He had been doing this for more than a year. The older child and Javion are not very far apart at all. Basically, Javion was conceived when the next oldest child was about 2.5 months old. So Gerard's been doing this the whole time. He's used to getting up in the morning. And Charla says she hears Javion fuss. It's time for his bottle. She sees Gerard get up, changes his diaper, goes downstairs and gets a bottle, comes back and feeds him. And she knows that he laid him back down because she says that after that she hears Javion sniffling. She hears him. She also knows that after Gerard puts Javion back in bed, he goes downstairs to where Charla's brother is. He lives in the basement. That's Matthew. And he does this a lot. After he feeds the baby, he goes downstairs with Matthew, smokes a cigarette. They hang out. He goes back upstairs. When he goes back upstairs, he checks on the baby again. The baby looks fine. He seems a little hot. He takes one of the blankets off of him because he seems a little hot. gets back in bed, and Charlotte hears this. Charlotte knows he gets back in bed. And she says that after that, she hears Javion. Now, it's not just Charlotte saying this. Charlotte's mother, Melissa, sleeps on the first floor. She hears Gerard get up, come downstairs, and make a bottle. She hears him go back upstairs. Matthew, who is in the basement, also hears Gerard come downstairs to the first floor. He says, I know that their steps are different. Gerard's about 200 pounds. Charlotte's a 100-pound girl. I knew it was him. It's what he does every night. He hears him get the bottle, hears him go back upstairs, and remembers that after that he came downstairs, smoked a cigarette, watched Matthew play video games for a little while. Matthew even talks about how he was dozing off, and he said, hey man, why don't you go on back upstairs and go to sleep? Which Gerard does. Somehow that turns into, this man must have killed his baby. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but I guess they had to blame somebody. Never mind the fact that in reality, Charlotte's the only one that was alone with the baby. So because Gerard says, oh my God, it could have been an accident. I did drop him last night, but he seemed fine. He's charged with murder. I don't know who they're talking about, but it's not Gerard Davis. Everyone who lived in that house with Gerard for more than a year immediately said, I have never seen him at all lose his temper with the children. He was never the disciplinarian. Charlotte was always the disciplinarian. He never so much as looked at him funny. He was great with the kids. Nobody ever had any qualms about leaving him with the kids, and in fact, they did it all the time. He was great with the kids. The older two kids, by the way, are examined. Perfectly healthy, fine, no substance abuse. Somehow this cousin murder. It doesn't make sense. Loving fathers don't wake up, change their baby, feed the baby, burp the baby, and then what? Then somehow they lose their temper and no one hears it even though they can hear them making a bottle? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But somebody's got to be blamed, I guess. And that's not fair. And thank goodness you're here today to fix that. Immediately after this happened, Charlotte was interviewed. And like I said, this is right after Detective Slack has talked to or heard from the medical examiner's office that they don't think this could be an accident. She tells him, and he doesn't tell her, by the way, that he's talked to the medical examiner and heard from them. He just asked her to recount what happened that night. And he starts to tell her he's going to bring Gerard in, and she's like, oh, yeah, because he's really torn up about it. They really had a special bond. He says, well, I'm going to bring him in here, and we're going to have a different kind of conversation. And that's what he does. He brings him in, and he says, you have any weapons on you? The treatment of Gerard was completely different from the very start. And they try to get people to say that Gerard was some bad guy, that he lost his temper with the kids. Well, didn't you ever see him, smack the kids or spank the kids? No, nothing, never, nothing. There's nothing. He did not do it, and he wouldn't do it on purpose, says Charlotte, mother of the kids. Grandmother, I know he wouldn't do it. Matthew, in fact, says that man ain't never got an ill temper or nothing with the kids. I'm telling you, my nephew's done some crazy stuff. Phone was in the toilet, ain't nobody got mad. We'll get another one. I don't know who they're talking about, but it's not Gerard Davis. I can't wait for you to hear people talk about Gerard. I'm so proud to represent him. There is no one who will say that Gerard ever did anything that would make them think that he could even be capable of this with his child. You're going to hear more about the investigation that was done. As I said, Detective Slack talked to Charlotte that morning for 18 minutes before he brought Gerard in. And when Gerard tells him, oh my God, I did drop him last night, I did, he says, are you going to tell him or am I? And then brings Charlotte and her mother into the interview room. And Gerard says, I have to tell him. Yes, bring him in. I have to tell him. Brings them into the interview room. Where Gerard tells them, y'all, I dropped the baby last night. I'm saying last night. Getting confused. It would have been 2 nights ago at that point. This is happening in the early morning hours of the 15th. On the 15th, the police respond to the home, but they are not called to the police station until this morning of the 16th after Detective Slack has heard from the medical examiner's office. Gerard breaks down. Charlotte and Melissa are crying. Everybody's crying. Gerard and Charlotte are hugging each other, crying together. It's a horrible, horrible thing that happened. After the police talk to Gerard that morning and bring Charlotte and Melissa in, they go ahead and arrest Gerard, right there. And they charge him with manslaughter in the 2nd degree, and they say that Gerard failed to seek medical attention, and that's why he's being charged. Later, Detective Slack tells the grandmother that Gerard was charged for not being truthful with him, which we all know is not true. But that's what he tells Melissa. Meanwhile, Gerard's sitting in jail, charged with killing his son. On the 17th, Melissa, the grandmother of the child, Charlotte's mother, is called to the police department to be interviewed. And the interview begins with Detective Slack saying, yesterday I had to figure out whether it was mom or dad that did this, and I already knew the answer to that. This is one day later, and after he has spent 18 minutes speaking with Charlotte, and has spoken with no one else but Charlotte and Gerard. I already know the answer. Remember in voir dire we talked about how an investigation should not be fast. It should be as open to the possibility of innocence as it is to guilt. Detective Slack tells Melissa, the quicker we can get this investigation done, the better off we all are. That's why I'm pushing you so hard. That's why I'm pushing you to tell me Gerard did something to these kids. And she says, I can't. I can't. No one is better off by rushing through an investigation. No one. But that's what they say. That's why I'm pushing you so hard. We're all better off after this is done. It is 48 hours after 911 is called. They never talked to anyone who knows Charlotte other than her mother Melissa, who's in the home, and her brother Matthew, who's in the home. There is never investigation into the possibility that it could have been someone else. They asked Charlotte, did you do it? After they told her, sweetie, we're here for you. You need to tell us what happens behind closed doors. We're here for you. Did you do this? It's not just that Gerard is an involved father. He went to the doctor with Charlotte, Javion, and the other kids just a few days before this happened. He suggested to Melissa and Charlotte 2 days before this happened that he thought Javion's head looked kind of funny. He was saying, don't you guys think it looks weird? Don't you think maybe we should have it looked at? It looks like he's getting bigger. It looks weird. I said, no. He's fine. We're just worrying. He's just getting bigger. It's okay. All right, Gigi, Grandma Hill. He's a part of this family. This is not some stranger to these people. This is not some guy mom brought home. This is the father to these children who has a history of continuously caring for these children and not at all disciplining them because he thought that was what the mom should do, and she did. She was the disciplinarian. It's just the way this family worked. Matthew even talked to him about it and said, man, they're walking all over you. He says, Joe says, I know. I'm going to be calling you when they're older. So I don't know who they're talking about, but it's not Gerard Davis. Gerard loved Charlotte. Gerard loved all of his children. And in fact, you'll hear that the day leading into the night that this occurred, Charlotte and Gerard had gone to look at a home together. Gerard had already bought Charlotte an engagement ring. He was planning on proposing to her once they got a new house for them and the kids. I don't know who they are talking about, but it is not Gerard Davis. It's not. I agree with the Commonwealth that a 5-week-old baby died. And I agree that that Gerard was honest and said, this is what happened. This is the last time I remember seeing him. But the problem is that the police choose to believe some of his statement, the part that works for them, but the part that doesn't, we'll just say that doesn't matter. Oh, okay, so this happened around 1:30 or 2. All right, well, now you've placed yourself with him at the time that we think he died. That's it. You're it. Okay? But we're not going to believe anything else you said about how he was fine, how he would never hurt your baby. Gerard tells them, after they've talked to Charlotte for the full 18 minutes, Gerard tells them at least 16 times, I would never hurt my baby. I would never hurt my baby. He was my twin. Charlotte tells him the same thing. Melissa tells him the same thing. Matthew tells him the same thing. And yet here we are. I don't know who they are talking about, but it is not Gerard Davis. Gerard Davis is a loving father. You're going to hear what I've just told you from Charlotte, Melissa, and Matthew. It's recorded. And I I just can't help but know that you'll know that it's not Gerard Davis. Gerard Davis is a loving, so loving father. Loving fathers don't get up in the middle of the night, change their baby like they've been doing for a year, feed the baby, birth the baby, and kill the baby. It's ludicrous. It's not Gerard Davis. Thank you.
Council, would you all come to